Hello, welcome to the first Sports Dive podcast. I am Rogers Harrison, your host. Today I am joined by Brian Koperick. And Brian, introduce yourself for the people out there.
Hey, I'm Brian Koperick. I am the host of Random Things with BK and a friend of Roger Harrison's. And so we're here today. He tells me to talk about Michigan football, which I'm a huge Michigan football fan. So we'll see what we have in store.
Right. So, Random Things with BK. You can find that where?
Oh yeah, we're on YouTube and Twitter. Not Twitter. Sorry. We're on Instagram and TikTok as well as Facebook, and the site or the channel is really just about DIY how-tos. We do a lot of stuff about tools and different things, and some automotive things, and even things like in the yard and like that. Just a lot of how-to videos.
Okay. And as far as this podcast is concerned, Sports Deep Dive, we take a look at the side of sports, more looking into the why or the how or more history. If you're looking for scores, you're in the wrong place.
Right.
There are plenty of podcasts out for that. If you're looking into conference realignment and the college level, there are a lot of podcasts for that as well. We might take a look at conference realignment, but it would be more the overall picture of what's happened in the past as opposed to predicting what's going to happen in the future.
Right. This is a podcast more about facts of what happened in the past, and that's why we're calling it Deep Dive, right? We want to get into kind of telling you how we got to where we are today.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so today's episode, and Brian kind of teased it before, we're not talking entirely about Michigan football.
What?
Yes. We are going to look at Notre Dame football. A lot of people are like, why is Notre Dame independent? And, they should just join a conference and shut up and stuff like that. But today we're going to look at why Notre Dame is independent and why they're still independent today in 2024.
Yep. That's a topic that is at our Saturday morning breakfast group pretty regularly. We talk about that with all of our friends all the time.
We do.
So I think this is awesome. Let's talk about it.
All right. So you let me back up and give you some history about it. Notre Dame first year in fielding a football team was 1887. They went 0-1, losing to Michigan.
That's right.
In 1894, they hired their first coach. Before that, it was all student-led. And from my research, I understand that the coach was brought in and made the players go through conditioning, and the players are like, why are we doing this? And the coach is like, be quiet. And
you lost to Michigan.
Yeah, be quiet. All right, so in 1899 was the first year they played 10 or more games. And that's important because back then schools had put together their own schedule. There was no NCAA, and it was like a Wild West. You played whoever was around you, you just put games together. So the fact that they went the first year they played 10 or more games is huge. Now they went 6-3-1 in that year, and that, like I said, was 1899. Now the 1899 Notre Dame schedule consisted of games against a high school, physicians group, and Rush Medical, which is a hospital.
Kind of like 2023. Just kidding.
That's not nice. That is not nice. Now, like I said, there were conferences out there, but they were more like informal associations. One of those associations was the Western Conference, which is the forerunner of the Big Ten. Now, 4 games on Notre Dame's 1899 schedule was against Western Conference members University of Chicago, Michigan, Purdue, and Northwestern. Now, Michigan, Purdue, and Northwestern you may recognize as current Big Ten members. University of Chicago now plays on the Division III level. Now, so in 1899, the Western members consisted of University of Chicago, Wisconsin, Michigan, Northwestern, Purdue, Minnesota, and Illinois. Now, I said earlier that it was a hodgepodge of scheduling games. Not everybody played the same number of games, and I'm going to go through that 1899 schedule. For instance, University of Chicago played 18 games that year. They scheduled 18 games.
That's crazy.
Wisconsin played 11. Michigan played 10. Northwestern played 13 games. Purdue played 9. Minnesota played 11, and Illinois played 9.
So Michigan played the fewest of all of those.
The fewest, no. I mean, you had Purdue playing 9 games and
right.
Illinois playing 9 games and
Yeah.
Michigan playing 10.
So we're in the middle there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm going to take a look back. I'll get back to Notre Dame, but I'll take a look back at the Western Conference, which is now the Big Ten. All right. So between 1880 and 1905, college football players suffered more than 325 deaths and 1,149 injuries.
Wow. So it was dangerous back
It
then.
was dangerous.
Of course, they didn't have helmets, right? They didn't have
Well, they
pads.
had that leather.
Okay.
Yeah,
they had
but they didn't.
They had a helmet lining.
Yes. Yes.
And then they didn't have pads at all.
No.
And so, I mean, when they call it the gridiron, those were the guys that was named after.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Now remember, like I said, NCAA wasn't around.
Right. No regulations or rules, just a bunch of schools out there scheduling games.
Right. Purdue University president, that would be James Henry Smart, invited the presidents of the University of Chicago, University of Illinois, Lake Forest College, which is in Illinois, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Wisconsin in 1895. He invited them to a meeting in 1895 to talk about this and to talk loosely about the Western Conference, or to form the Western Conference, but also to talk about it. It kind of was a forerunner to the NCAA. It's like, look, we got all these injuries. It's not good for our student athletes. What are we going to do about it? So they talked, and then in 1896, they met again. Lake Forest was replaced by Michigan. So Lake Forest was like, we don't care. And Michigan came in. So these 7 schools became largely known as the Western Conference. And now here's a little tidbit for you. I don't know if you remember, but when the Big East football conference broke up and, the basketball schools broke out, and then the football playing schools went and formed the American. Those 7 basketball schools became the current Big East basketball conference. And that was 7 of them as well. And they were known as the Catholic 7 because all of those schools
had Catholic ties.
Yeah, had Catholic ties. So it's just 7 seems to be the number. Now, in 1899...
Just to interrupt you for a second, 7 seems to be the number. Does that mean that football's biblical?
I'm sure that people in the South would think that, yes. All right, so in 1899, they were referred to as the Big Nine. Indiana and Iowa joined. Notre Dame applied, but was not invited. Instead, they invited Indiana and Iowa. So so this Western Conference is formed, and now it's called the Big Nine when two members are added. Notre Dame tries to get aboard, but they are denied.
Okay.
They
So
are denied.
Are we going to talk about that for a minute?
Well, we can, but we're gonna. Notre Dame's gonna have other chances to apply.
Oh, okay. But
All right.
but we said no.
Yes, yes. And here's what's funny is that Nebraska petitioned to join the league in 1900 and 1911, but was turned away both times. And now Nebraska is a Big Ten
We
member.
should have kept turning them away, but we just didn't. We finally let them in.
Okay.
So, in your research, did you look at the time? Were Indiana and Iowa
Right.
they successful schools at football at that period of time?
I did not dig that deep into
Okay.
it. Indiana and Iowa, like everybody else, was just were independent. In fact, everybody was basically an independent. And this conference was
The
unlike the
beginning
norm.
of that,
Yeah,
right.
well, unlike the norm. It was, but then Indiana and Iowa, like everybody else, it's like, you know what, scheduling is hard. And especially,
It'd be so much easier if we just had our group to play with.
well, not only that, but I mean, also not only in football. I mean, football, if you're playing only 10 games or 5 games or whatever it is, you can put something together.
Right.
But if you play basketball or if you're baseball or something, it's much harder to do.
Yes.
All right. So now, oh, by the way, in 2003, and this came from Mike Bray, who was Notre Dame's basketball coach at the time. In 2003, Notre Dame was considering joining the Big Ten. Now, 2003 at the time for basketball and other sports, they were a member of the Big East. And they were considering joining the Big Ten, but at the 11th hour, according to Mike Bray, it didn't happen. And so that's just a little tidbit there. Notre Dame is a Big Ten member in hockey, and that's the only Big Ten sport that they're a member of. All right, so now this is what we're going to get to. This is where, all right, so let's talk about your school, Michigan.
My school.
All right, now Fielding Yost, do you know the name Fielding Yost?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that name? Fielding Yost was the head coach at Michigan from 1901 to 1923, and then again from 1925 to 1926. I don't know what happened in 1924. I couldn't find out. Whether he just decided not to coach, somebody coached Michigan, and he was like, oh my gosh, you're awful. I'm gonna do this.
I'll do
it. He compiled a 165 and a 129 and 10 record at Michigan. 165 wins, 129 losses, and 10 ties. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. He was the AD at Michigan from 1921 to 1940, so he pulled double duty when coaching as well as being the AD. In April of 1907, here you go, Michigan was voted out of the conference
Because we were too good.
for not following conference rules for player eligibility.
Oh, we were cheating.
Funny how it all circles. It's one big circle. So Michigan played as an independent until 1916 and then rejoined the Big Ten in 1917. So, Michigan's like, why is Notre Dame independent? Well, you guys were independent from 1907 to 1916.
But not by choice. We just got tossed out.
Well, yeah, because you guys were a couple of jerks. All right. So Notre Dame is playing Michigan as one of its schools, right? Because it's in the area and they're easy to schedule. Notre Dame's record against Michigan is 0 and whatever until 1909. 1909 is when Notre Dame beat Michigan in football for the very first time. And that is when Coach Fielding Yost said, we're not playing you guys anymore. Now, here's something about Fielding Yost, and it's not pretty. Fielding Yost was anti-Catholic.
Yes.
Fielding Yost thought that, felt that Catholics were going to rule the world and take over, and he wasn't going to have a part of it. Now, I don't know if you remember, and this goes beyond sports, but people were worried in the 60s when John F. Kennedy was elected president because he was Catholic, and they thought, well, he won't do, they were afraid that he won't do what the American people want.
He'll do what the Pope wants.
He won't do what the Pope wants.
Yeah. Which was pretty common fears back then because the Catholic Church in the North, especially like North and Central, the East, like, you know, not completely out West, but that North Central area of the U.S., Catholics were very predominant. Like there was a lot more of them than not. And so yeah, there was some fear, and because it was one of the few global churches at the time, it raised some concerns, and there were some people that were a little extreme towards that. Yeah,
and Fielding Yost was one of them. He was anti-Catholic. So let's move to the Notre Dame side. Now, have you heard of Knute Rockne?
Oh, of course.
Knute Rockne played for Notre Dame from 1910 to 1913. He was assistant coach in 1914, and then he became their head coach from 1918 to 1930. He won 3 national championships as a coach for Notre Dame. He promoted Notre Dame football. Now get this. So, you know, all coaches today, all football coaches, in a way, promote their program, right?
Well, they have to, right?
Right. I mean, they go out in recruiting, but they also, you know, they talk to the press, they talk to the alumni and supporters, and they go, yeah, we're going to have a great season. We're going to be great. Give lots of money because we're going to, you know, roll to the national championship or whatever. Right. Everybody says that, even Group of 5 schools like Middle Tennessee State University or FCS
they
schools.
Have to, right?
Yes.
It's their job.
Right. But what Knute Rockne did back in the day is he would get chummy with the media, the newspapers and the radio people at the time. And then he would promote Notre Dame football, and he would get chummy with them, and he would do like a bargaining, like free advertising on the radio or in the newspaper, promoting Notre Dame football, and we'll give you a free ticket, or we'll give you a free family pass. I mean, he would bargain for that. And that was good because, I mean, you know, radio advertising and newspaper advertising, even back then, cost money, right? And then while other programs were giving radio, newspaper money for that, he was greasing some palms. I mean, he was working deals. I shouldn't say greasing palms because that's illegal.
He wasn't doing anything illegal.
Yes.
He was just
right
using his smarts to further Notre Dame football without having to pay for it.
Right. And he was a very pleasant man. He had a great personality, and he wasn't one of these, as the kids would say, fake. You know, and so people just loved him, and they were like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we'll run your ad in our paper. We'll give you airtime. And then I said he was also the AD from 1918 to 1931. Now he dies in a plane crash in 1931.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, he was only 43 years old. So just think of what Notre Dame, what else they could have accomplished
If he
had stayed AD.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he was 43, so you would think that at least he had at least 10 years.
Yeah.
So he would have gone well into the 1940s. And remember, Fielding Yost was AD at Michigan from 21 to 40.
Right.
So they were kind of along the same lines. Now, in 1926, Notre Dame expressed interest in the Big Ten. But Michigan convinced the other members for them not to join. Now, all right, so here's what I haven't told you about Knut Rockne. Knut Rockne was from Norway. He was born in Norway. So he was somebody else that Fielding Yost didn't like. Because Fielding Yost, besides being anti-Catholic, was also anti-immigrant.
Yes.
And so in 1926, Knut Rockne was coaching Notre Dame, and he was also the AD at Notre Dame, kind of like Fielding Yost was, coaching Michigan, also the AD. So when you put two of Fielding Yost's dislikes together, Catholic players being coached by an immigrant, basically, he was avid. So he convinced the other members, is like, no, we are not going to allow this school to be in our conference and tell us what to do. Kind of like the feeling is with Texas when they were in the Big 12. The other members felt like, in Texas, you're telling us what to do. No, we don't want that.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why Texas A&M
left
to go to the SEC, and one of the reasons why they're mad that Texas joined the SEC. But we can get to that in a later podcast. So at this point, so basically Notre Dame has been denied at least twice, probably 3 or 4 times at this point. And they basically said, you know what, we give up. All right, fine. We've been independent up to this point. We're just going to continue to do it, right? And other conferences at this point had formed. The SoCon, the Southern Conference, which was the forerunner to the Southeastern Conference and the Atlantic Coast Conference, was formed in 21. You've got the Ivy League, which was formed in the late teens of the 1900s to the 20s, around that area. So we're getting other conferences are starting to be formed. So Notre Dame is like, you know what, we'll be fine. One of their first schools that's always been on Notre Dame's schedule from day one has been the Naval Academy. People today, it's like, why does Notre Dame play the Naval Academy?
Because they've always played them.
Right. And it's like they could, I mean, it's a group of 5. Right now, it's a group of 5 school. Why are they playing them? But the Naval Academy has played Notre Dame since day one, and Notre Dame, because of that, Notre Dame has said to them, look, we're going to play you as long as you want to play us, right? Because you were one of the few schools that was willing to play us when no one else would, right?
It's actually a super cool tradition. I've only been to one Notre Dame game at Notre Dame.
Okay.
And it was the Notre Dame Navy game. And man, what a day! And they do it up big. They don't treat Navy like they're anything other than just legit should be there. And Navy reciprocates. It's awesome. Like I think it's one of the coolest. And I don't even know that at this point you would really call it a rivalry, but it is a cool traditional game. And I think it's awesome that Notre Dame has kept that up all this time.
Well, if you ask Notre Dame and their fans today who the rival is, they'll always say it's Southern Cal.
Right.
They'll say it's Southern Cal. They won't say it's Navy, and I guess it's because recently those games have been lopsided.
Yeah. Probably for quite a while.
Yeah, but there was a period there where Navy, was beating Notre Dame and was very competitive with Notre Dame. They've also played Army a lot. Army, though, has since joined conferences. Army was in Conference USA at one point. Now they're in the American for football. And at some point, there were a lot more independents football-wise than there are today.
Oh, right.
Penn State was an independent at one point. Boston College was an independent at one point. Georgia Tech, Florida State, just to name a few. South Carolina, Miami. Georgia Tech and Notre Dame had a long history of playing each other. Boston College, too, because both are Catholic schools, also had played Notre Dame when Boston College was an independent before Boston College joined the Big East and eventually joined the ACC. Penn State, became a member of your conference, and I believe in 91.
Yes.
90 or 91. So now there are only, in 2025, there are only going to be two college football independents, Notre Dame and UConn. Everyone else has picked a conference. UMass will go back to the MAC. Army will be in the American Athletic. And so it'll just be UConn and Notre Dame. UConn and Notre Dame really don't play each other. Notre Dame is considered a Power 4 school, and then UConn is considered a Group of 5 school. And so they really don't play each other because of that. So you're probably thinking, well, why is Notre Dame still independent? Because you would think it would be hard to schedule games if everyone's in a conference, right?
Right.
And most schools have either 3 or 4 non-conference games that they play a year, depending on their schedule. All right, let's go back to 1991. 1991 is, like I said, we had some independents that began to join conferences. Florida State joined the ACC. Miami joined the Big East. South Carolina joined the SEC. Penn State, like I said, joined the Big Ten. So you would think, though, at that point, that all these schools that Notre Dame was playing as independents, were joining conferences. And you would think, oh, no, what's Notre Dame going to do? Well, NBC approached Notre Dame in 1991 with a contract offer for football. Now, let's back up. In the 70s and the 80s, the NCAA controlled the TV revenue for its schools. So basically, CBS, which showed a game of the week on a Saturday night, would pay the NCAA the rights to show, and CBS wasn't tied to a conference. So they could show Miami, Florida State one week, and then they could show Penn State, Boston College the next week, and whatever. They could show Georgia and Florida or whatever, right? So the NCAA, and so like I said, CBS, ESPN in the early years would pay the NCAA money. Well, a judge ruled in the 80s that was a trust. Because of antitrust laws, they broke it up. So each conference could control their TV revenue. And as you know, in 2024, it's gotten a little out of hand. But whatever. I think you guys pay $60 million. Big Ten pays $60 million to its members, or something like that, at least. So anyway, Notre Dame, independent, not a member of the conference, NBC Sports approached them in 1991 and said, hey, how about if we put all your home games on NBC? And Notre Dame was like, oh, yeah, that's good. That'll give us more exposure, and that'll be great. Because the thinking is Notre Dame's road games were going to be televised by CBS or ESPN or ABC. Yeah. They'd be playing Purdue and be televised by the Big Ten Network or whoever. So they said, all right. Now, that contract has been obviously renewed. Right now, the contract runs through 2029. And as of right now, Notre Dame has no inkling to cancel that contract. And I think NBC is happy with them as well and is not looking to cancel it as well.
So do you know what the current value of that contract is?
I do. Now, before I tell you the current value of that contract and other Notre Dame revenue, I'm going to say this. Notre Dame needs 3 things to remain independent in football. They request a path to the college football playoff, which they had when it was 4, and they definitely have now that it is 12.
Right.
All right. They need an income source for their football team, and they have that with the NBC contract. And I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And they need a home for their athletic sports, the basketball, the track and field, the soccer.
Non-football, right?
Yeah, the non-football sports. And they have that
with the ACC.
They have an agreement with the ACC. And like I said, Big Ten hockey. So with their ACC agreement, they are required to play an average of 5 ACC opponents every year in football. And I say an average because some years they'll play 4, some years they'll play 6, and some years they will hit the mark and play 5. Notre Dame also will always play Navy, so that's there. That'll be on their schedule. They always play USC, and they always play Stanford. Stanford's now a member of the ACC in football or in all sports. And they said that ACC and Notre Dame have both said that the Stanford game will not count against their ACC allotment. And that'll allow them to continue to play Stanford every year. The average of 5 ACC games are usually rotated between the ACC members.
I got you.
So they could play Wake Forest one year and then play Syracuse the following year.
Clemson
right?
Another year.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right.
Our friend who went to Clemson would tell you that they play Clemson every year, and he has had enough of it. But anyway, and so with those 8 games that are guaranteed every year, that is like a de facto conference schedule. The 5 ACC games, Stanford, USC, and Navy. Mm-hmm. Right? And then Notre Dame, like most schools, then has 4 games to play with as far as out of conference, and I'm putting my hands in air quotes for them. So 4 games that'll, every year. All right, so to answer your question, Notre Dame gets $50 million a year for football from NBC Sports.
So they're only
that is just football.
That's just football.
That's just football.
Do they get money from the ACC?
They get $17 million from the ACC for the other sports.
So they're making more money.
They're making $67 million a year at least. I don't know if the Big Ten gives them any hockey money. I don't know.
I hope not.
I don't know. So they're at least getting $67 million a year. And so they're like, I'm good. Right. I'm good.
Why would I go do something else? I made $7 million more than the Big Ten schools did.
Right. Yeah, and with the new Big Ten contract, I'm not sure if 60 is still the rate. It could be
more,
but yeah. So the ACC, is some of its members are suing the conference. It's like, yeah, we need more TV money to compete. Like Notre Dame's like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm not suing you.
I'm got $67 million in the bank. I'm
good.
Because they know if they were to join a conference, the NBC money would probably dry up.
Well, yeah. I mean, because NBC's not going to pay for them twice,
Right.
right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, like if Notre Dame were to join the Big Ten, NBC already has the Big Ten TV contract.
Right.
So they'd be like, well, we'll give you, whatever we're giving everybody else, but we're not going to give you $50 million anymore.
Right.
Because,
On your own.
Right.
Right.
So, so they've got a pretty sweet deal going. Now, the contract that Notre Dame has with the ACC, and like everything else, this can probably be negotiated, but their contract with the ACC says that if Notre Dame decides to join a conference, the ACC gets first right of refusal. So even if Notre Dame wanted to join the Big Ten,
they wouldn't because
the
ACC's
ACC.
not going to say
right. And
no.
if Notre Dame tried to finagle out of that contract, well, that just means the ACC is going to get some money from them, to try to all right, well, you can go to the Big Ten, but you're going to give us $100 million or whatever,
Right.
whatever. Like what? Really? Nah.
So again, they're not going to do it.
Right. So those are the reasons why Notre Dame is still independent. Their three criteria have been met. They're in the ACC for all sports, but the Big Ten in hockey. They have a scheduling agreement for football with the ACC, which helps them with their scheduling. Plus, they've got their annual games with Navy, Stanford, and USC. And NBC has given them a nice chunk of change.
So got it made in the shade.
So there is no reason
for them not
yes. Oh, and they've got a clear path to the playoff.
Right. So the only way really to disrupt that apple cart is for the clear path to be taken away. Legitimately.
Right.
Unless that clear path got taken away, NBC's never going to pull that contract because it's been lucrative for them as well.
Correct.
Why would they do that? They wouldn't. They've really done well with that. It's a win-win.
Right.
And the ACC is never going to be they don't want to upset that apple cart either because they're enjoying Notre Dame being a part of all their other sports and getting games with Notre Dame every season. That's good for the ACC.
And ACC is full aware that if they kick Notre Dame out, then say the SEC will scoop them up.
Right. And right now they've got the in. If the deal with NBC ever went south, they would probably have the in, right, to get Notre Dame because of the contract as a football school.
Well, only because that they they would do all sports in the SEC.
Right.
And only because they that's one conference they haven't been a part of yet.
So I mean, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And
so that is why. So now listeners.
Yeah.
Why Notre Dame is still an independent in the 21st century,
and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
UConn. They're going to continue being independent because nobody really. Well, I shouldn't say nobody really wants them for football because they're more of a basketball school. But they have an agreement with the CBS Sports Network. It doesn't pay them $50 million a year, but
probably enough for them, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what it is. I haven't looked up the numbers, but I'm guessing a fifth of that, maybe, than NBC. Like $10 million or something. All right, so that's why that. All right, so if you enjoyed this podcast, we're going to have more podcasts. We're going to take a look at all sports, not just college football. We're going to take a look at minor league baseball as well as Major League Baseball. We're going to take a look at the NBA. We're going to take a look at the other professional basketball leagues like the ABA. We'll take a look at the NFL. We'll also take a look at the USFL. And those. We might even take a look at the beginnings of the AFL, which is now the AFC in the NFL umbrella. And we might even take a look at some hockey defunct leagues or current hockey teams about how they got their start. If you have a suggestion for if you want us to take a sports deep dive into any other team or league or conference, let us know. You can put it in the comment and notes in the comment. We appreciate you listening. And you got any words to say, Brian, before we sign off?
No, just everybody have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening.
All right. Take care.